The city of Veridia was a labyrinth of brass and steel, a living organism of gears and springs. Its heart, a colossal clockwork mechanism housed in the grand artifice, pulsed with a rhythm that dictated the lives of its inhabitants. Above, the sky was a canvas painted with hues of twilight, the sun a distant, golden coin slipping below the horizon. In this twilight hour, Alaric hunched over his workbench, a symphony of clicks and whirs echoing through the cramped atelier. His fingers, stained with oil and brass filings, danced across intricate gears and delicate cogs. A half-finished automaton, a creature of brass and leather, lay before him. Its form was that of a bird, its wings outstretched, a silent promise of flight. Alaric had named it Icarus, a nod to the tragic myth that had captivated him since childhood. The Grand Mechanician had always warned against hubris, of reaching too far into the heavens. But Alaric was a dreamer, a man possessed by the impossible. He believed that with enough cogs and springs, he could defy gravity itself. A knock at the door startled him. He straightened, wincing as a spasm of pain shot through his back. A lifetime hunched over workbenches had taken its toll. Alaric? Isabella's voice, a breath of fresh air in the stale atelier. She stepped inside, her boots leaving muddy imprints on the polished floor. A gust of wind followed her, carrying the scents of the canal and distant market. Isabella, Alaric replied, his voice a rusty hinge. What brings you here on such a late hour? She shrugged, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Adventure, of course, and perhaps a touch of desperation. Alaric raised an eyebrow. Desperation? You, Isabella, the fearless explorer? She rolled her eyes. Humor me. I need your expertise. She handed him a peculiar object, wrapped in a worn piece of cloth. With trembling hands, Alaric unwrapped it, revealing a small, ornately carved wooden box. Intricate patterns, reminiscent of ancient scripts, adorned its lid. What is it? Alaric asked, his curiosity piqued. I found it in the ruins of the old city, Isabella replied. It doesn't look like anything I've seen before. Alaric examined the box carefully. It was heavier than it looked, with a strange warmth emanating from it. He ran his fingers over the carvings, feeling a strange resonance. It's old, he murmured, more to himself than to Isabella. Very old. I know, Isabella said, her voice filled with anticipation. That's why I came to you. You're the only one who might be able to open it. A thrill of excitement ran through Alaric. A challenge, a mystery. It was like a siren song, drawing him in. Very well, he said, his voice steady. Let us see what secrets this box holds. He returned to his workbench, placing the box under a magnifying glass. The carvings were more intricate than he had first thought, filled with symbols and patterns that seemed to dance and shift before his eyes. Hours passed as Alaric worked, his mind completely absorbed in the task at hand. Isabella watched him, her patience unwavering. The city outside grew quiet, the only sound the rhythmic ticking of the grand artifice. Finally, with a satisfied sigh, Alaric stepped back. The box had been altered, a small, circular mechanism now embedded in its lid. It's ready, he said, his voice filled with anticipation. With trembling hands, Isabella turned the mechanism. A soft click echoed through the room, and the lid slowly opened. Inside, nestled in a bed of velvet, was a single object, a heart. But not a human heart. It was made of brass and steel, pulsating with a lifelike rhythm. A miniature masterpiece of engineering, it throbbed with a power that seemed to defy its size. Alaric's breath caught in his throat. This was no ordinary clockwork mechanism. It was a miracle of engineering, a testament to a lost age of technological brilliance. Isabella's eyes widened in astonishment. It's beautiful, she whispered. Alaric nodded, his mind racing. This discovery was more than just a scientific breakthrough. It was a key, a potential answer to questions that had puzzled humanity for centuries. As they stared at the clockwork heart, a sense of foreboding crept into Alaric's mind. This was not just a marvel of engineering, it was a force to be reckoned with. and he had a feeling that their world was about to change irrevocably. "We must be careful with this," he said, his voice low and serious. "The Grand Mechanican will want to know about this. And others, too." Isabella nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "We need to find out more about it before we show anyone. The city is on the brink of chaos, and something like this could be used to tip the scales." They decided to work together, using Isabella's knowledge of the city's hidden networks and Alaric's technical prowess. Their journey would take them through the shadowy streets of Veridia, where the poor and desperate clung to the hope that clockwork would not replace them entirely. The first stop was the library, a cathedral of knowledge where dusty tomes held the secrets of the ancients. They searched through the night, their eyes straining in the dim light of flickering candles. Alaric studied diagrams of human anatomy, while Isabella pored over maps of the old city, looking for any clue to the heart's origin. Days turned into weeks, and their search grew more urgent. Whispers of unrest grew louder, and the air was thick with tension. The old guard watched them warily, suspicious of their motives, while the working class whispered of a new savior, a heart that could never tire. One evening, as they sat in a secluded corner of the library, a shadow fell over their table. They looked up to find the Grand Mechanican himself, his eyes gleaming with curiosity. "I've heard rumors," he said, his voice a low rumble. "Rumors of something extraordinary." Alaric's hand hovered protectively over the box. "Your Excellency," he began, his voice trembling slightly, "we've made a discovery, but it's not ready to be shared." The Grand Mechanican's gaze bore into him, as if he could see the cogs turning in Alaric's mind. "I'm sure you have," he said, his tone enigmatic. "But beware, young engineer. Some secrets are better left buried." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Alaric and Isabella to ponder his words. They knew their time was running out. They had to uncover the truth behind the clockwork heart before it was too late. The following day, they decided to visit the underbelly of the city, where the dispossessed and the forgotten lived. It was a place where secrets were traded like currency, and where the whispers of the streets could be louder than the chimes of the grand artifice. They disguised themselves as merchants, their faces hidden beneath hoods and scarves. The stench of the canals was overpowering, but it was the perfect cover for their clandestine mission. In a dimly lit tavern, they found a man who claimed to know something. His eyes were too bright, his smile too eager. He spoke in riddles, hinting at a world where clockwork and magic intertwined. "The heart," he whispered, his voice reeking of ale and desperation. "It's not just a tool. It's a weapon, a key to unlock the very essence of life itself." The price for his information was steep, but they had no choice. They paid him in coins that clinked like destiny, and he handed them a scrap of paper with an address scribbled in an unsteady hand. The address led them to a dilapidated workshop hidden in the bowels of the city. It was here that they would discover the true nature of the clockwork heart and the terrible choice they would have to make. The door creaked open, revealing a space filled with the detritus of forgotten inventions. Gears and springs lay scattered across the floor like a metal jungle, while the walls were adorned with blueprints of impossible machines. The air was thick with the scent of oil and rust. The man they sought was hunched over a workbench, his back to them. He was surrounded by a halo of tools, his hands a blur of motion. The whirring of his latest creation filled the room. "Master Craftsman," Alaric called out, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. The man spun around, revealing a face etched with time and secrets. His eyes narrowed at the sight of the intruders. "You've brought the heart," he said, his voice a gruff bark. It wasn't a question. He had been expecting them. Isabella stepped forward, the box clutched tightly to her chest. "We need your help. We need to understand what this is and what it can do." The craftsman's eyes gleamed with greed, then with something akin to fear. He took the box, his trembling hands caressing the brass heart within. This is the work of the ancients," he murmured. "A relic from the time before the Great Division." The Great Division was a myth, a time when the world had been torn apart by the misuse of technology. Some said it was a cautionary tale, others a warning of a truth long buried. The craftsman spoke rapidly, his words tumbling out like a dam had broken. The heart is not just a tool for power. It's a conduit for the very essence of life. In the wrong hands, it could give life to an army of unstoppable soldiers. Alaric felt a cold hand close around his own heart. The implications were staggering. The Grand Mechanican would stop at nothing to obtain it. "We must hide it," Isabella said, her voice firm. "Protect it from those who would misuse it." But the craftsman shook his head. "You don't understand. It's already too late. The heart calls out, and those who seek power will feel its pull." Outside, the chimes of the grand artifice grew louder, a warning knell that seemed to shake the very foundations of the city. The clockwork heart was pulsating faster, resonating with the city's rhythm. Alaric knew they had no choice. They had to act. They had to ensure that the heart didn't fall into the wrong hands. "We need your help," Alaric said to the craftsman. "To disable it, or perhaps to understand it fully." The man looked up, his eyes filled with a strange mix of hope and despair. "I can do more than that," he said. "I can show you how to harness its power for good." The decision was made. They would work together, engineer and explorer, to unlock the secrets of the clockwork heart. And in doing so, they would shape the destiny of Veridia. The next weeks were a blur of late nights and frantic work. The craftsman, whose name was revealed to be Orlando, proved to be a fount of knowledge. He taught them about the ancient language of the carvings, the principles of perpetual motion, and the delicate dance of gears and levers that could bring life to metal. But the shadows grew longer. The whispers of revolution grew louder. And the Grand Mechanican's interest in their work had not waned. His agents were everywhere, their eyes and ears embedded in the very fabric of the city. One night, as they worked under the flickering glow of candlelight, a commotion erupted outside. The sound of shattering glass and raised voices pierced the quiet of the workshop. Isabella's eyes met Alaric's, and they both knew. The moment of truth had arrived. The Grand Mechanican had found them. They quickly packed their most precious tools and the clockwork heart into a satchel. They had to move fast. The city was their playground, and they knew every hidden alley and secret passage. As they sprinted through the streets, the cobblestones slippery with the recent rain, they could hear the clanking footsteps of the clockwork guards drawing nearer. Their hearts pounded in time with the relentless ticking of the grand artifice, a rhythm that seemed to pulse through the very air around them. They reached the edge of the city, where the grandeur of Veridia's clockwork marvels gave way to the natural world. The moon cast an eerie glow over the murky waters of the canals, and the air grew thick with the scent of wet earth and moss. Here, the mechanical wonders of the city-state were less pronounced, a stark reminder of the delicate balance between nature and artifice. Isabella led the way, her intimate knowledge of the city's hidden pathways guiding them through a maze of narrow alleys and over rooftops. The heart in the satchel thrummed with a power that grew more intense with each step, as if it too knew the gravity of their situation. They arrived at an ancient lighthouse, long abandoned and overgrown with ivy. It was here, Orlando had assured them, that they could find refuge. The tower stood tall, a silent sentinel amidst the chaos of the city, its clockwork innards long since rusted into silence. They climbed the winding staircase, their breaths ragged, the satchel growing heavier with each step. At the top, they found a room filled with dust and cobwebs, but it was the view that took their breath away. The city sprawled before them, a glittering tapestry of brass and steel, its beauty marred by the shadows of the Grand Mechanican's ambition. For a moment, they allowed themselves to rest, the heart's steady beat a comforting metronome in the stillness. But the respite was short-lived. The distant sound of gears grinding and metal clanging grew closer, and they knew their pursuers were on their trail. With no time to lose, Alaric set to work, his hands moving with the precision of a master watchmaker. He dismantled the heart, laying out its intricate components on the dusty floor. The brass gleamed in the moonlight, each piece a testament to the lost art of the ancients. Isabella, meanwhile, fortified their position. She knew the value of the high ground and set up a series of makeshift traps to slow their pursuers. They had to buy themselves enough time to understand the heart's true purpose and decide how to use its power wisely. As Alaric worked, Isabella couldn't help but think of the consequences of their actions. The heart was a double-edged sword, capable of either saving or destroying the city they loved. It was a responsibility they had not sought, but one they could not shirk. The sound of the guards grew louder, their mechanical footsteps clanging up the lighthouse stairs. Alaric's hands trembled as he worked, but his focus remained unbroken. Finally, with a triumphant shout, he reassembled the heart. It lay there, a beacon of potential in the gloom. They looked at each other, their eyes reflecting the heart's pulsating glow. The choice was theirs, to harness its power for the greater good, or to let it fall into the hands of those who would use it for their own gain. The door to the room crashed open, and the first of the clockwork soldiers stumbled in, only to be caught in one of Isabella's ingenious traps. The battle had begun, and the fate of Veridia hung in the balance. Their hearts racing, Alaric and Isabella stood back to back, the clockwork heart between them. They had to fight, not just for themselves, but for the future of their city. The air was electric with tension as the clanking horde approached, the heart's rhythm growing stronger, feeding their determination. With a final look of understanding, they prepared for the inevitable. The heart's power was a wild beast, and they were about to unleash it on the world. Whether it would bring salvation or ruin, only time would tell. The clockwork soldiers crashed through the doorway, their glowing eyes fixed on the heart. Alaric stepped forward, his hand hovering over the brass orb. The first creature lunged, but Isabella was quicker. Her rapier sang through the air, slicing through gears and wires with ease. It collapsed in a heap of twisted metal, the echo of its final gasp reverberating through the chamber. They worked in tandem, Alaric dissecting the technology of the enemy, Isabella disarming them with her swift blade. The air grew thick with the scent of oil and burning metal as the battle raged on. The heart's pulse grew more urgent, a silent scream that seemed to resonate with every clash and clang. But the soldiers were relentless, their numbers seemingly endless. Despite their skill and determination, Alaric and Isabella were slowly being overwhelmed. Each new wave brought more sophisticated opponents, each one a testament to the Grand Mechanican's cunning. In a brief lull, Alaric whispered, "We can't hold out much longer." Isabella nodded, her eyes never leaving the shadows. "We have to activate the heart. Maybe, just maybe, it can help us." Together, they set the final gear in place. The heart's rhythm grew to a crescendo, the brass chambers expanding and contracting with a life of their own. The room was bathed in a warm, pulsing light, and the very air around them seemed to hum with potential. The door shuddered under the weight of the next assault. Alaric took a deep breath, his hand poised over the activation lever. "Ready?" Isabella gripped her rapier tightly. "Ready." With a swift motion, Alaric pulled the lever. The heart's beat grew to a deafening roar, and the floor beneath them trembled. The light grew blinding, enveloping the room in a blinding, golden halo. When the light faded, the clockwork soldiers were gone. In their place stood a group of men and women, their faces a mix of awe and terror. The heart had not just repelled the mechanical invaders, it had imbued them with the essence of life. The Grand Mechanican stood in the doorway, his eyes wide with shock and a hint of fear. "What have you done?" he breathed. Alaric looked at the heart, now still in his hands. "We've given them a choice," he said, his voice firm. "A chance to live, to feel, to think for themselves." The Grand Mechanican's gaze fell on the transformed soldiers, their once lifeless eyes now filled with the spark of consciousness. He took a step back, his hand moving to the hilt of his sword. "This is blasphemy," he spat. Isabella stepped forward, her rapier pointed at the shadowy figure. "Or its progress," she countered. "A chance to bridge the gap between man and machine." The room was tense, the heart's steady beat the only sound in the silence. Then, the Grand Mechanican laughed, a deep, booming sound that filled the chamber. "So be it," he said, sheathing his sword. "Let the city-state of Veridia see what wonders you've wrought." With that, he turned and disappeared into the night, leaving Alaric and Isabella to face the consequences of their actions. The city was forever changed, and so too were they. The aftermath of their discovery was a whirlwind of debate and disbelief. The old guard scrambled to maintain control, while the working class saw in the clockwork heart a symbol of hope. Some hailed Alaric and Isabella as heroes, others as dangerous radicals. But amidst the chaos, the two of them remained steadfast. They knew the power they held was not to be taken lightly, and they were determined to use it to forge a new future for Veridia. Together, they worked tirelessly, refining the heart's technology, creating new inventions that blurred the line between organic and mechanical. They sought to uplift the disenfranchised, to show the city that the true potential of clockwork lay not in power, but in unity. Their partnership grew stronger with each passing day, a bond forged in the fires of revolution. They became a beacon of hope, a testament to the power of knowledge and innovation. The clockwork heart had not just given life to the metal soldiers, it had breathed life into the very soul of Veridia. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, consider subscribing to stay updated with our latest stories, give us a like if you want to see more, and drop a comment below to let us know your thoughts.